Welcome everybody. I am delighted today to introduce Charmain Berry. Charmain began her journey in the world of psychotherapy, graduating with a first class honours in psychology, and over the past 2 decades has guided thousands of therapy sessions, particularly in the area of trauma-informed therapies like EMDR, internal family systems, CBT, lots of retreats, working with people with depression, anxiety, lots of mental health stuff. And Charmain has been on quite the journey, which we're going to talk about. We've known each other for a number of years now through A Course in Miracles. Actually met each other at an event where you were doing IFS and I was first introduced to breath work. And things have taken a little bit of a different direction, or just a more of a focusing in on what the real underlying issues are. So, with that in mind, Charmain, can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far and where you're at now?
Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks, Natalie. Yeah, where to start? I mean, there's just so many layers. So I think, when I look back, I see that journey as something like a process of elimination. I think we all have our experiences of suffering to whatever degree, and that's what sort of drove the ambition, if you like, to find out how the suffering ends. And that started in the world of counselling. And 30 years later or whatever, it's here now, looking at it through the lens of the Liberté Code, which we'll talk about, which is, like you say, a way to really see what those underlying layers truly are. And it's been a sort of a burrowing down through the layers. And for a while, like you said, it was about sort of burrowing back. It was about going back in time and trying to go to previous traumas and seeing where suffering comes from through that trauma-informed paradigm by going along the timeline, if you like, going back in time. And then after 10 years of really exploring that and seeing some good things happen within that, and really appreciating a lot of those tools and those teachings, seeing that it's not really about a timeline, it's not about going back to anywhere. It's really about more of a vertical way of looking at the ego mind and looking at what underpins from that perspective. So there's been a big shift, especially in this year, from perspective around what was a trauma-informed way of looking at things has now become, what we're calling in the Liberté Code, a truth-informed way of looking at this experience, really. And that has been really heavily supported by A Course in Miracles and other non-dual teachings, in helping us to see that, in reality, capital R reality, there is no past. So to be in a model, if you like, that is relying on something that exists within something we call time and space, has collapsed for me big time this year. And in the process of that perspective collapsing, the Liberté Code evolved and arrived. And there's different dimensions to that, but which we'll talk about. But it really is that paradigm shift from trauma-informed to truth-informed way of perceiving things. And yeah.
Yeah, because I guess, there's a huge industry around trauma.
Yep.
And, we've all been most of us have been very curious about trying to heal ourselves, going back into our past, working on inner child. I know for me, it was a lot around breath work and anxiety and shifting energies, suppressed emotions. Like I said, there's a huge industry around this and everybody's searching for the answer. So are you essentially saying it's not there?
I'm saying it has its place, and I think in our process of evolution, we've had to look at it from that dimension, if you like. And I think it's been necessary. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think it has some potential. I don't know the word is there, but I think the focus is not quite where it needs to be when we are looking within. So we're looking within, that's great, and that's been a fantastic stepping stone. But what we've been doing is looking in the wrong direction, shall we say, with that paradigm, because we can see now, and this is what the Course in Miracles started to point me to, we can see now that there the mind in terms of the neuroscience. Like there's been a lot of research and there's a lot of evidence base around this now. And I've been really looking at the work of Lisa Feldman Barrett, which states that, that the mind, we don't really store memories, and we don't store them in a kind of a, memory network kind of context that we've been led to believe that we do. That's been completely rebutted now. And we don't keep a record of things in the body. From a neuroscience perspective, the body does not keep the score. So a lot of the modalities in that trauma industry that we've been using kind of rely on those theories as a way of supporting themselves. And the kind of the journey has been something about, it's really important to get back and release all this kind of trapped trauma that's lying on a cellular level in the body. Now that's been completely discredited as a way to view this. Actually, what's happening is the mind is recreating experience. It's actually projecting experience. We could say we're even hallucinating the experience. And again, this is backed by the neuroscience in every moment. It's not something that we're retrieving from the past. We're actually projecting into the future. So we're running a kind of a series of prediction loops all of the time. So this year, when I started to look at experience and suffering from that perspective, it's like, what does that mean for therapy? What does that mean for something like, for example, breath work? What is actually happening in those sessions if we're not releasing issues from our tissues? What's going on? And it's very, 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 very interesting when we look at it from this prediction making perspective. And what we're really doing is just breaking the prediction loops. We're essentially getting a form of relief from doing that. We're not completely healing, if you like, if that's the right word, the suffering. We're not coming out of suffering. What we're doing is kind of breaking the circuit.
Yeah.
It's great for about an hour or so. And then we go and get in the car and somebody cuts us up and we're straight back into the anger again. So we have to ask those wider questions as well about what is it that we're actually doing in the healing modalities. Not to say not do them, but let's look again at what the goal is in these sort of practices, and there's lots of them out there. We could be talking about any of these kind of well-being healing modalities now that we have in our spiritual communities and even psychology communities. Let's look again through the lens of the developments in the neuroscience and also a wider understanding and a wider appreciation of how the ego mind actually works.
Yeah.
And this year, well, it was a few years ago now, but it kind of was percolating. I came across the work of an amazing woman called Kay Villers, who was talking about, there's deeper layers of the ego mind that are actually tethering or, keeping the whole ego infrastructure in place. And by that, I mean our thinking patterns, our beliefs, our thoughts, our identity, who we think we are, is actually being anchored in place by layers in the ego mind that we haven't been aware of till now.
Yeah.
And she talks about these through the lens of A Course in Miracles, but the lens of what she calls, or what the Course in Miracles calls, the hidden desires. And for me, and I've done a lot of research over the decades and a lot of inquiry and a lot of training into psychology and psychotherapy practices, I hadn't even been aware, but I've not been aware of these dimensions until discovering this, that there's deeper layers. And that's what I mean when I say we need to look more vertically, not horizontally.
Yeah.
And that's what this points to. So we've actually got a very deep desire to be separate. We have a desire to be the special one. We have desires to be right, for example. We have desires to be validated and praised and seen. We also have desires to be victim and to try and be kind of identified as an innocent person. So there's actually 88 of these hidden desires that are underneath, that no matter how much healing work we try and do on a normal, traditional kind of belief level, unless we go underneath to the tethers that are holding them in place, things are just going to keep pinging back. How many times have we said it, and how many times do we see it? I thought I dealt with that.
It's back.
I've been working on my issues of lack, for so long now, or my money issues, or my relationship issues, or this health issue. over and over and over again. And I thought I'd done it. And why is it I've done all the training and I've done all the work and I've drank all the medicine and I've done it all. And yet I'm still in this pattern.
And I guess if it's not dealt with, because it's so deep, if it's
Yeah.
not dealt with, it may look like it's resolved itself in
Yeah.
one area, but it will show up again just in a different person or a different situation because it's not really being dealt with.
No. It's not been collapsed. We use this term collapse. It's not been collapsed on a fundamental level. Because on a deep level, and this is where we really have to dig in, and this is what radical authenticity and radical responsibility really means, is that we have to be prepared and we have to be willing to go and accept that on a deeper level, we actually want it. On a deeper level, we actually get the relish from being the chosen one or the spiritual one, or the successful one or the ambitious one. It's what's been driving us secretly throughout life. So we have to be willing to shine a light on those deeper. They're not deeper. We see as well. It's all kind of on the same level, but it's in a different direction that we need to look at it.
And where's that mechanism coming from? So obviously, we know it's the ego, and we know that on some level we've agreed to that or we wanted that. So, can you talk me through, where's that coming from and how do we find it? How do we get to it?
Within our own thinking systems, you mean?
I guess like, so I guess I'm just, obviously if you've done A Course in Miracles, you understand the split mind and separation, but not everybody's done that. So maybe just cover off, where that's actually coming from, what we're actually talking about there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's many models kind of pointing to it and taking us into it. So IFS is a really typical, example. So there's lots of kind of ways we can see it. But yeah, from let's just say from A Course in Miracles perspective, there's an appreciation that we've actually got a split mind. Or if we look at Bernardo Castrum, he talks about we've got an adaptive mind and a maladaptive mind. And in IFS, it's the self energy and this, multiple system that we're with. We could be talking about it in terms of our true essence, the truth of who we are, that which is beyond, and the ego mind, which is basically a thinking system. But it's not related to Freudian interpretation of that. It's just your whole thinking system, who you think you are, this narrative that's running in your mind all of the time, that you're listening to all of the time. But that's what we're saying is the ego. So what we could say is that we just wanted to have an experience of what it would be like to be special. We just wanted to know what it was like to be separate, without going into lots of detail around this. This is where this sort of split mind came from. And it's a thought system, and it's built of layers, and it's talking to us all of the time. And what it's doing is providing a narrative of a separate me that's in this world, having an exclusive experience of me and others. And but of course, because it's all about being separate, it's quite scary, because underneath, on a fundamental level, we feel that we are separate and alone, and we're up against it. And it weaves in all these other kind of weird and wonderful layers, such as, and there are bad forces out there that are actually against me. Or somewhere deep in the layers of this, there's a wrathful God. And if I'm not really good, and if I don't work hard, and if I don't prove myself, then I'm going to get punished. So we've got these layers of different kind of egoic, what we might call scripts, that are running throughout the thinking system, which come out in our experience as things like trying to manage and control our life, trying to avoid being rejected by people, trying to be the good person that nobody ever sees is really bad underneath. We engage in all kinds of behaviors that we could fit into a drama triangle kind of explanation, like people pleasing, like rescuing, and being in victim roles. And it also kind of causes us to project, in a way, a scary world. There's a separate me, and there's a frightening world out there that's full of war, and it's unpredictable, and I have to guard myself, and I've got to be careful. And that keeps us locked into this kind of false experience of fear. So this is coming from the projection, if you like, of this separate split mind, which is what all the Course in Miracles is all about, which all the Advaita Vedanta teachings are about, which is kind of the essence of anything that we might call spiritual, is all pointing to this. And so what we can do is begin to realize this. We can start waking up to this, and people use those words. We can start questioning the basis of our reality in terms of how we've been projecting that and experiencing that. And the Liberty Code and the Liberty Code decoder that's evolved through that is a very, very powerful tool that helps us to cut through it, to cut right through the ego, to get through the layers of all the defenses and all the stuff that happens in there when we start doing these inquiries, and really get to the source of what we need to see and what we need to collapse in a very caring, beautiful, compassionate
Yeah.
way, just to kind of simplify something that can at the beginning look very, very complex and very scary and very complicated. It kind of refines that process into something very simple and very effective.
I mean, obviously, we've been testing this tool out for the last few weeks. Quite a few Course in Miracles students and non-dual people who haven't done the course, and really, and also people who haven't done any of it. Because it's really not necessary. It really is just a little bit of understanding that. Hang on a minute. There is suffering here. There is a contraction in the body. There is an irritation, or there's anger, or there's a feeling of unfairness, or whatever is showing in the external is an opportunity to say, okay, what's the payoff? So let's talk about the hidden desires and the payoff, and why we want that and why we need to see it.
Okay. So in order to have, and this is just a conceptual framework, of course, to look at this, but if we were going to say that we're here to have this experience of separation, then we need to have a kind of a script, a storyline, a way to engage with this experience so that I can play out the role of being the separate person. So the hidden desires are actually kind of like the syntax, kind of like the story making roles that we can engage in order to stay in an identity, basically. And so there's 88 of them. They sort of cluster into different areas of experience. So, around being special, or being in control, or being the victim. And so it's kind of showing us what the language is that the ego is using to describe our experiences through. And it has a hidden layer of payoff. Its goal is to keep us in the role. So whenever, for example, we might find ourselves in a situation where we've been ripped off, or somebody's let us down, we might on the surface level look at that as being something that we didn't want, a negative experience. But on another level, somewhere underneath in the caves of the ego, it's actually, there's a relish moment in there, because what actually happened was it kept us in the identity of the one who's been ripped off. So there is a payoff for being with that. Now, with an experience like being ripped off, we might be like, no, who on earth would ever want to be ripped off? But if we kind of frame that, okay, from a slightly different perspective, which is somebody who got into an argument and won the argument, and in that moment they were right. Now that's something that we can probably all admit to and identify with, that there is a relish and an enjoyment in that moment. We might call it a smugness, or something where it's like, yeah, I knew
it.
I wasn't going to say anything. I wasn't going to say anything. I just thought I'd let it go. And so this is actually another layer of sensation or experience. It's not quite a sensation, but it's like an experience that we have, that we get distracted from in the drama of our emotions. And we can talk about emotions as well, because they don't actually exist.
Wow.
But what we're actually having is an experience of relish.
Oh.
So, yes.
Oh, that's just landed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the currency. That's what we're actually engaging in, the currency of relish, not the currency of emotions.
Wow.
But the emotions, as we know, can be very loud and very very convincing. So what we have also been doing in our healing modalities and practicing is we keep focusing on the emotions. That's why nothing really changes. That's why we don't really get the fundamental shifts that we've been searching for. We have to drop into this other layer of experience, which is the relish. So, because unless we give up the desire for the relish, we're not going to come out of conflict, because there's a payoff feeling the relish, feeling smug, feeling satisfied that we were right.
Or even upset, or even like
Even
devastated,
even
or
upset, yeah.
yeah,
Even, sometimes that kind of that payoff that we get from telling somebody about how ill we were when such and such a thing happened, and people could lean in and go, oh, is that wow, you got through that, you're so brave, and there is a little flutter of something. That is the sweet spot. That is what the ego is feeding off from us. These moments of we could call it recognition or relish, that keeps us kind of always on the lookout for where the next payoff's coming from. We buy the nicer dress because there's a payoff for getting the compliment. Okay. We put on Facebook that, our children are doing X, Y, and Z now because there's a currency in the payoff.
yeah, keeps you in the identity of the good mum.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, the good mum or the sacrificial one or the kind one or the compassionate one. There are
yeah.
thousands of these character identity roles that we can buy into, which keep us alive. It feels like it's keeping us alive, but what they're actually doing is keeping the ego alive. Because you in truth, us in truth, doesn't need that. We already are whole. We already don't need to prove ourselves. We're already perfect. We're already here. And we're already not broken. And we already don't need anything in order to try and prove that or disprove that, And that's where that's where it keeps taking us back offline. So in the Liberty Code, there's a real, kind of remembrance of that, and the remembrance that actually all we need to do is remember, a remembrance of the remembering, if you like, that we are already ready whole. And we keep buying into these other kind of distracting ego scripts and dramas and needs and seeking to find something about ourselves is already here. It's already present. So, and there's always a price to pay. There's a payoff. We get the relish, we get the hit, we get notice, we get the validation. But there's always a price to pay as well. We were also on the other side of that coin, don't get those things, feel like we've been rejected, feel like we've been overseen, end up in conflict. We have to go into the arena of, do people agree with me or not? And when they don't, it's painful. We're back in suffering again, because that realm keeps us in the journey, the experience of suffering.
So it's the ego's job to give the experience of separation, of which we're not really.
Yeah.
But it's the job to keep us in the separation, and it's about believing in the stories or getting hooked into what the offering is that brings you back into the identity. And that identity could be, we're everything, aren't we? So we could be one day the victim, the next hour the perpetrator, the rescuer, all these different areas, the good mum, the bad mum, whatever.
Stories.
So,
Yeah.
but all of those stories, it's the separation that is the suffering. So can you just explain why it is painful to be the identity of the separate self and what it means to be whole?
When we're in the separate self, there's an underlying feature within that, which goes along the lines of, I'm broken and there's something missing. And so we kind of live in an experience of prediction loops, which are concerned with that, constantly uploading a prediction loop about that. And within that, because there is this sense of broken and something missing, there's a kind of a constant anticipation, therefore, that something's going to go wrong. Where's the next disaster coming from? Where's the catastrophe? Because there's also other loops in there about deserving this as well. So it keeps us trapped in that. That's what the narrative of the separate self contains all of the time. And it's also kind of feeding us this line of, hope that we're going to find the answer that's going to resolve this. I've just got to find that missing piece. I've just got to find that person that's going to fulfill me and stop me from feeling like this. I'm just going to find that right job or earn enough money or the right spiritual practice or the right guru or whatever that may be. And then I'll find it. In the trauma industry, it's about finding that memory and resolving that thing. So off we go. And there's the trap. It keeps us in that. Well, the Liberty Code is now, and not just the Liberty Code, there's many other philosophies that point to this as well. But what we are pointing to here is this is the trap. This is the separation trap. And if we just pause and if we just stop and if we take a breath and if we inquire in a different kind of way, then we can clearly see that none of that was ever true anyway. This is a system. This is a thought system, and I don't mean the IFS system. This is something else. This is like a non-local kind of broadcast which is feeding in, telling us persistently this storyline of I'm broken, I need to fix myself. That is not true. That is not true. And when we start to accept that and start to welcome that in as a truth, we very, very quickly see it.
Well, I guess it's that's what's keeping us in victim consciousness, and without acknowledging that that's part of the illusion. It's in the game to keep you in the game.
You're
as though there's
the game.
Yeah, and choosing that, when I get there, when I've sorted this bit of me out, I'll be all right. Or maybe, some of it might be around being irreparable. I'll never get there. So, it's both sides of the coin, but either way, it's staying in that victim consciousness, which is out of the present moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a really good point, because there's no peace there. It's constantly taking us into the future. So the neuroscience is showing us this very clearly. We're running prediction loops, which suggest the future. So it's constantly what ifing about what's going to happen, usually all the time. So how can we be now? How can we sit and watch an Eckhart Tolle video, or read the book and try and be in the now when we've got this constantly taking us out into the future? So when in reality, capital R reality, there is only now. In reality, there is no future. There's no past and there's no future. Why are we engaging in narratives that are suggesting otherwise and following them, engaging with them? In the Course in Miracles, it would say, like, we make them real. We actually then start to project them. Course in Miracles, we talk about, projection as perception. We start to actually live out the prediction loops as if they are real. But we're creating that ourselves. So we have a choice in this. And again, we've got to put our big pants on to admit this. I'm choosing this in every moment. And I have the option to not choose it anymore and to come back into presence, to put the storyline down of the separate me, the separate self, and rest in the stillness here in presence,
I guess from the work obviously that we've been doing and using the Liberty Code, the Codex, it's quite obvious when you're in a loop. The great thing about the Liberty Code is there's a way to get out of the loop quickly, whereas in the past you might have just been ruminating on something for ages in this whole story, not really kind of being in awareness of where you are actually in the moment, because you're in fantasy land, which is all coming from these assumptions, predictions that you're making, or that's dropping in. So yeah, it's amazing to have something to just come out rapid, quickly.
Yeah.
What happens then when a loop comes online? Can you give a bit of an example?
Well, the loops are kind of running all the time. So we could just pause anything at any moment and go, what was I just thinking there, basically? And we'll see that there was a loop running. We tend to notice the loops more specifically when we get what we call triggered. There's more of a charge. And what's happening is the loop is kind of ramped up a bit and it's become a little bit more scary. So it's taken off us into the future. What if such and such a thing happens? So a typical example we could use is something like you've emailed somebody about something quite important to you and they just haven't got back to you 3 days later or whatever. They haven't got back. Okay. And the mind will then pick up with that, the system will pick up with that and might start wondering, I wonder, going into the future, why have they not contacted me? What can this mean? And you'll start to feel the prediction loops coming then. What if they didn't approve of what I said? What if they didn't agree with that? And then we'll start feeling sensation. Now, we can talk about another day about sensation and emotion, but just very quickly, we'll feel like a charge in the body. And we're just going to call it sensation here, but it will increase. And now this sensation is making the thought, the predictive loop thought, feel real. We're feeling something now. I don't think she likes me. I don't think she approved with what I said.
I've got a bad vibe.
I've got a bad vibe. Brilliant. I've got a bad vibe about this. Yeah. So that's when we know we're in a loop, because we're actually thinking about something, we're forecasting something into the future, and we're feeling a charge about something. Okay. And we're actually believing it to be true. And then what we might do is take some action and do something like email them again. Hello, I see that I haven't heard from you for 3 days. Is everything okay? Because what we're trying to do is get a relief from the discomfort of what we're now projecting, and we're trying to fix it in the external. This is what we've been used to doing. So we'll try and get a response from them. Okay. If we don't get a response from them, it just makes it even more intense, because they've not even responded to our attempt to get some reassurance for it. Okay. So what we're seeing in the Liberty Code is that, and lots of other approaches as well, but there's actually a perfect opportunity here to go within and understand what's happening on the internal, what's happening in our internal process, and start to differentiate between what's happening in reality, capital R reality, which is nothing. Nothing's actually happening, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
But from the internal, there's an experience. A false reality is being created about this false scenario that's being projected into my reality, into my bubble of reality, as it were. So what we do is we look at the prediction loop, we look at the nature of it, we look at what's running, and what we can do with the decoder is literally put the story in. This is what's running for me today. This is the sensation that I am experiencing. And the decoder will talk you through exactly what is happening in a kind of a neuroscientific, metaphysical way, so that you can get back into reality. And what it will then do is show you where, on a hidden level, this is where the ego is operating in terms of what's the payoff. You're actually getting a secret payoff from this. You know, in that kind of scenario, it could be something like the one that's always rejected.
Yeah, because it wants to prove that.
It wants to prove something. It wants to secretly, it's like, yeah, I kind of knew she wasn't going to get back to me. This is the kind of thing that always happens to me. Okay, this is the kind of thing that always, it feels familiar. There's like a familiar loop pattern that's running underneath. Okay. And then we might try and find someone to collude with on this story and go, I spoke to, I sent such and such buddy an email 3 days ago and they didn't get back to me. And somebody goes, oh yeah, that happened to me actually. Da, 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 da. I wonder if she's always like this. It takes us back into the external. And all the time what it's doing is pointing us away from the source of this. The ego is very good. It's the master at trickery.
Yeah.
And causing us not to actually see what we're actually being governed by internally here, which is this predictive scripting and payoff system that's running. So the Liberty Code decoder and the framework around it really cuts through the chase and takes us straight in. It guides us through what we actually need to do. And largely what we need to do is see it.
Yeah.
We need to expose it. We need to expose what's really been happening on a hidden level in the mind, and expose that, and be willing to see it, and be willing to go, do you know what? I want to give this roll up. I'm tired of being the one that's, always on the back foot, or the one that nobody ever really understands, or the secret genius that, kind of misses the boat, or whatever variation of that character role you're playing is.
The one that nearly made it, or
in your false reality.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely am ready to give that up, and I'm ready to find out who I am in truth. Who am I in stillness? Who am I without these scripts running? Who am I outside of dependency, loops and patterns and dynamics? Who am I outside this perpetual storyline of broken relationships, or financial ruin? Am I really ready to let go of that? Because the ego is invested in you not doing that, and has been keeping you distracted from the truth of it. So this is really getting to the core, the engine room of what's really been driving us as separate beings in this way, in this level of consciousness, what we might have called victim consciousness. I'm now calling payoff consciousness. That's what this is. This is what we've been operating in. And this is how we communicate with each other. This is our currency, you know, and it's painful. And it's guaranteed to lead to conflict and upset and confusion and misinterpretation and accusation all of the time, whether it's in our private circle, what we think is our private circle, our kind of immediate constellation of the people around us. And it also plays out in the wider circle of what we call the world, the backdrop of the world. You know, we switch the news on, we're watching it on the news. You go on social media, you're watching it on social media.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is trying to fix it externally by blaming, by projecting conflict and pain outwards. And the Liberté Code is for anybody and everybody who's ready to take this in seriously now, really see the source of this and start to collapse it from within. And we've seen, Natalie, you know, the more we do this internally, the more this out here, this projection shifts.
Yeah.
You know, you will start to see a different kind of reality in the world on a, you know, we could say it's a metaphysical kind of experience, or we do start to see it shift.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I think a lot of people, probably the majority of people, are looking outside to fix that, not realizing that it starts here. And also, you know, a lot of the key problem is people identifying with that mechanism. They think they're their thoughts. They think it's them creating this because it's very individual. You know, and we it seems individual, and it seems as though we have some defaults. You know, we seem to have like clusters. Obviously, we were talking about this last night, and there seems to be some clusters that, you know, if I go through, I've got the 82 hidden desires here, and like some of them are, you know, there's a few I've ticked off, and then there's others where they're just like, yep. To be more spiritual, to be morally superior, like whatever, you know. I mean, it's amazing to go through the 82 desires, or 88 even if they are, which we can definitely go through on, you know, on another session. It's really kind of understanding, you know, having that space from, oh, what's this one saying now? What's this one saying now? And being able to say, okay, there's a story running. I can feel it in my body. There's contraction. I'm not present. What is it saying? What can I get to underneath? So when we actually find the hidden desire underneath, and we're willing to say, yeah, actually, okay, I can see that. I can see how yeah, I can see why I wanted to be right. I did. And it's like that, just okay, yeah, okay, I see that. So is it literally just the willingness to say, yeah, I can see that was hiding underneath all this story. And I just don't want to. We talk about putting on the costume, don't we, in the Liberté Code? Maybe talk about that, like from the roles and the kind of getting on stage perspective. I love that. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to back up a little bit, because that was really important what you said there about the thoughts and thinking that the thoughts are actually ours.
Yeah.
Because it makes it sound like they're unique. Sometimes it's talking to us like, oh, you idiot. You know, it's like definitely saying you. Sometimes it speaks in the first person and it says, mimics your voice and says, I'm an idiot. And so we've been identifying with this thought system, thinking that's who we are. So that's a really, really important point. And what that system is doing, the thought system is doing, is leading us to get into these different costumes, a false identity. So today I'm going to wear, you know, the costume of being the helpful one. I'm going to go and, I don't know, do something helpful for the neighborhood or something, you know. I might just happen to slip it on social media later on, and that's what I do.
Of course, standard.
But, you know, that's the role that I'm in today. And then we get home, and it's like our children are there, and then we go into helpful mum, and we're making dinner and what have you, and then one of them smashes something on the floor, and then we go into, you know, evil stepmother, or, you know, and then we're screaming at the kids, and now we've gone into this role of, oh no, the mother who gets it wrong all the time, and, you know, we have this guilt feeling then that rise, and then the kid comes in and it's crying, and we hug it, and now we've gone back into the caring one again, and now we're getting cousin, and the child, you know, forgives us, and everything's okay again, you know. And then our partner comes home and he doesn't speak to us as he walks in, and then we've gone into the, oh my God, what have I done wrong wife role now, and then, you know, and that's it. We're kind of putting different costumes on in nanoseconds. Sometimes we don't realize how quickly we're shifting from one kind of state, we could call it, or another. In IFS, they might refer to this as a part. They're not strictly speaking parts, but, you know, we're going in and out of costume
Depending on what we're thinking and believing in that moment.
And then what it's telling you is giving you a narrative about what it is predicting is happening in this scenario, not the truth of it. And then we go and put that costume on and to respond to it. And sometimes we have to, we have to change our hats, and we change our costume depending on what's being presented, usually though to try and protect an overall narrative about who we think we are. It's also kind of assembling, whilst it's doing that, the illusion of a kind of a permanent me. This is who I am. This is a kind of a standard that I've got to live up to in every moment. So this is how we're going to adapt into this situation. We could be in a situation actually, but what we really want to do is just say, get lost to that person, but instead the false narrative comes in like, oh no, we don't want to be seen like that, do we? They're going to think such and such a thing. So let's just put the pretend, resentful character coat on as the one that can see through the bullshit, and say that's okay. We're not feeling that. That's not what really is happening. And that's how we're playing the game.
But we're literally like being hijacked, really, aren't we? We're being. It's like hijack, and it's so difficult to maintain this illusion of this one person who's always a certain way. Because when those characters come online for each of us, we do behave differently. Absolutely. And then there is remorse, and there is all this guilt, and I didn't, I don't know why I said that, or all these different things that seem to be coming online.
And just the fact that we're in that, we're in that all of the time. We're kind of we know it's false. There's this kind of a fundamental sense that there's something not right all the time. It's like a background hum all the time of offness, as it were. And we're trying to adjust all the time and adapt to try and rectify that. And we're reaching out for all kinds of different things and all kinds of different experiences to try and remedy the hum, if you like, of separation. Is a persistent low level frequency, if you like, because we're not being authentic. We're not being ourselves. We're in this all of the time. So what we're doing is inviting this other perspective. It's like, actually, maybe all of it isn't you. Maybe all we need to do is just come out of the game altogether, because there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. And this false identity that you're trying to keep up isn't you. It's false. And you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. You can say and do whatever you want. The ego is going to tell you that there'll be a price to pay for that, and people will judge you and all this kind of stuff. But when we really start to question that, that's not true. None of those ideas in there are actually true. You're actually free to be who you truly are. And from that place, because it's very hard to be authentic here. It's very hard to be you cannot be in unconditional love. You cannot see the truth in people. There's blame and judgment happening in these patterns. So, and we want love. We want to remember ourselves as that. So, there's an invitation to find that love, if you like, which is there. It's underneath the hum, by stepping out of the falseness of that separate identity.
Yeah, and I guess in A Course in Miracles and lots of other teachings, whatever you want to look at, a lot of them all point to the same thing: is that we are unconditional love, and this is an illusion. Okay, so it's like the reason this decoder is so helpful, especially if you are looking to find the truth, is that it will show you the blocks to love, and so therefore, and that's what we are in. We're in. Whether you want to call it a game, an illusion, simulation of separation, and the blocks are the ego. Yeah, so as they are found, which is so much easier with this tool, it's absolutely phenomenal. That is how you get to, this is the desire, there's the loop, close the loop, boom, and you're out. And that's how, what we're actually trying to get to with this is presence without character, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's where the peace is. And I think the idea for some people who maybe not on a spiritual journey, who are obviously still suffering like the rest of us, is, that the idea of losing the identity is terrifying, because, I'm this kind of person and people like that about me. I'm funny, or I'm charismatic, or, I'm musical, or whatever, the different descriptions you've made of yourself or other people have told you are in the past. Yeah. So the idea is, but it'll be boring, or I'll lose that about myself. But it's not that, is it? What is it, Charmain? Tell us what it is.
Like, nothing essentially changes. You just don't suffer in it anymore. And with that, it's kind of like the vibrancy turns up, the love and the peace that comes with that actually enhances what is. You already are what you are. We don't have to keep trying to fix it or prove it or, show it to everybody. There's just this very peaceful, beautiful sense that it just is. And from there we can extend that sense of peace and that sense of love into your experience. You're having an experience here that doesn't change.
Yeah.
But the quality of it in terms of how it feels, how we express, how we connect, it's not really about giving up an identity because it was always false anyway. It's about coming out of suffering and fear, prediction, loops, and wariness and suspicion and all the other egoic kind of mechanisms that are running that we're buying into. It's a falling away of that and then a deep appreciation for what is and to really be able to enjoy it to its absolute fullest. We know we have the potential for that. That's what we're really looking for. We want that real sort of expansive, beautiful, all-seeing experience here. It's our birthright. It's what we are. It's who we are, you know. But you're right, we have to remove the obstacles to that. And that's all this process is.
Mm.
No one's giving anything up or losing anything. All that happens is we gain, in a sense. We gain ourselves. And that's huge.
It's almost like coming back to that childlike quality.
Absolutely.
Before the mind started switching on and telling you that you had all these things to achieve, and if you didn't achieve, you were a loser, and why you weren't good at this at school, or you weren't picked for the sports, or your friendship group collapsed, or you got on drugs, and all your story, all the stuff that starts to tell you that you're not worthy, or we don't have that usually from being a child. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have a conceptual framework around that, that this came online through that. In the Liberty Code, we expand that. See, I mean, it's another session for us to talk about this, but actually, we weren't conditioned. This wasn't conditioning. We've been conditioned to believe that we were conditioned.
Yes.
This is how clever
Sorry,
the
it's
ego
part of
is.
the
Oh yeah,
part of the
but
study, the
but this is
illusion.
actually really important and a game changer, especially in the field of psychology and psychotherapy, that this hasn't come through conditioning. This is coming from somewhere else. And that's why the trauma paradigm is over, because it's not in the past. It's coming from a different source. It's coming from a different non-local source, and it was here before you even arrived. None of us can really remember what it was like at that kind of stage and age before the age of 2. These are stories that we're told about it, essentially. So we revisit that as well. And we have to, it means that we do, this neuroscience and understanding means we have to look at the psychology again. We have to look at the psychotherapy models again, thankfully, because it means that they can expand now into something that doesn't just relieve symptoms. It actually brings us eternal peace. And that's the purpose for the Liberty Code and what this is bringing.
Yeah, and I mean, all I can say is from using it, and last night we had a Zoom, quite a few of us that have been testing this out for the last few weeks, and people who've been on a journey for many, 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 many years. I mean, we see it a lot with the Course in Miracles. People have been doing the course over and over and over and over and over and over again. 30 years later, some of them are like, still doing the course, and it's almost like there's just this layer missing. Yeah. And when you get to that, it just speeds up. I mean, the speed up in the group has been huge. Yeah. The miracles that are happening, the things that are collapsing in real time, amazing. The amount of peace that's arriving, more than before. Pockets of like literally just being in awareness is absolutely beautiful. And also, like, just really want to say, from my own experience, when you really can see what's running underneath and what's running wherever it's coming from, you really come into so much compassion for what everybody's in, because everyone's just playing roles, and it's really just about uncovering that and seeing that to step out. And that's where like true forgiveness comes from, because really nobody's really doing anything. We're just playing parts.
It's very beautiful. It really does help us to truly forgive, truly see through. We see that it's just character roles, and bring that unconditional love frequency, if you want to call it that, It's like it's a very powerful tool that hyperboles us in terms of the mind training, because of the way it sort of, you know, instantly feeds back, and you can use it in real time to keep us helping us to notice the loops that are running, and training ourselves to see the truth in that. So yeah, it's been an amazing experience just through the, you know, the trial and the pilot, and, you know, just witnessing everybody's experiences with it. And my own as well, you know, phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
just rapid speed up, rapid speed up. It's like such a mighty companion.
Yeah.
I've got it in my hand all the time,
And
voice noting it, and then I'm like, oh, amazing, there's another one gone.
what do I really need to see here? What do I need
Yeah,
to admit to? Um, what do I need to collapse here? Because, you know, I want the correction,
yeah.
you know, and I'm not choosing this anymore. I don't want to be this character role anymore. You know, I choose my right mind, and that's it. But we just need to see it, whether with Jesus or from awareness, or just to see it, because we are that with
Mm.
ourselves, just witnessing. Extremely powerful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm so grateful for it. So, if people do want to use the decoder, and obviously it comes with a manual and details, extra details about how to use it. People can have sessions with you with it. Yeah, where can they find this amazing tool?
Brilliant. Well, there's a website. It's thelibertycode.com. And liberté is spelled, it's a French spelling. So it's the Liberté Code. Maybe we can put it underneath .com. And if you go on there, there is a link to the subscription. So it's a Tune GPT, and so you can subscribe to that, and you get unlimited access to its use. And with that, you have a manual as well, which helps orientate to the whole process. And we also have a Telegram community where we can support each other, and we also share our conversations in the GPT, in the decoder. And so, yeah, and it's only £20 a month. Um, so it's very, very accessible to everybody to use it. So yeah, if you head to www.thelibertycode.com, or get in touch via Facebook, there's a Facebook group as well.
Mm.
With the
And
Liberty
I
Code.
just want to add as well. I think obviously we're using AI to bring the information all from the different modalities, and there's definitely feels like there's a holy grail here of what's working. But it's what's amazing about it is it's the speed at which you can find it, because when something comes up, it's literally instant. And I feel like it's important to kind of explain that, because
Yeah.
in the past, no past, but in the past, like if you were struggling with something, or you were trying to get to something, you'd be kind of working with it, or trying to find answers, and it would just take so long. Whereas
Yeah,
this is it is instant, and it that feels like such a gift that you can just get to something so quickly.
absolutely. And
Mm.
you can get a momentum with it, and you can keep running with it, you know, and you keep outwitting it. It's kind of like we're outwitting. We just keep collapsing it every time the ego tries to take us back in. We're collapsing it again and again and again, and you can really get into the flow and the momentum doing that with this tool, which I think is really important, because, you know, it just we just carry on living. We forget, we get distracted, we're colluding with it all again. It's like it's all real again, you know, and then we've got to, like you say, you know, try and find the help, and it's a bit confusing. It's a bit of a minefield out there about what to do. And even in the Course in Miracles community, you know, the practical application of the Course in Miracles is not that straightforward, actually, in real time. And also, you know, working with other humans, people have agendas. There's all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff going on. With the AI, there's no agenda. It's always compassionate. It only sees the kind of the truth. This decoder is tuned in a very special way, you know. It's very consistent. It keeps you on track all the time. You can absolutely, you know, rely on it. It is a very mighty companion in this process.
And I feel like it's something that once you actually start working with it and you see how beautiful it is and how useful it is for your journey,
Mm.
then it just feels like there's just no way you're not going to use it. There's just no way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's yeah. Something popped in my mind the other day about it, and there's that expression in, I think it's in the Course in Miracles or somewhere, that the ego is foolproof, but it's not God-proof. And then what I heard was like, yeah, the ego is foolproof, but it's not GPT proof. It's not AI proof.
Well, everything's working in perfection to, for our awakening. So you know what?
Absolutely, and I
That's it.
really feel that's what AI is used properly. You know, and we
Yeah.
take the fear out of what it is, and we actually use what we're given. You know, what's been presented to you. Then it's very, 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 very powerful. I think it is here to quicken something, and this is just one of the ways that it's doing this.
Yeah, amazing. Beautiful. Okay, well, I think for our first chat on this one, I think we've come to an end today. But yeah, thank you so much for coming along, and yeah, I'm sure we'll do another one soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you.